Everything changed in a matter of seconds. Welcome to NFL Nexus, and welcome to this deep dive explainer. Before we break down one of the most drastic, unexpected, and frankly jarring shifts in recent NFL history, make sure to subscribe to the channel, like the video, and leave a comment with what you thought. Also, please consider supporting the channel by becoming a channel member. Your support helps us keep bringing you these deep dives. Now, you think you know the Indianapolis Colts, but the foundation you are familiar with, the very bedrock of this franchise, has just been completely uprooted. This isn't your standard run-of-the-mill off-season tweak. We aren't talking about a minor roster adjustment hidden in the fine print of a Tuesday afternoon press release. We are looking at a front office that has pushed literally all of its chips to the absolute center of the table. They are placing a massive, incredibly high-stakes gamble on raw, completely unproven potential over established, proven veteran experience. The stage is set. The stadium lights are glaring down, and the safety nets, they are entirely gone. The tightrope is bare. So let's dive right into this. 132. Just let that number hang in the heavy air for a moment. 132. That is the exact number of regular season games played by the absolute cornerstone of the Colts defense, Kenny Moore II, before his sudden, completely jarring departure. Think about the sheer volume of institutional knowledge, the sheer volume of experience wrapped up in that one single number. 132 battles in the brutal, unforgiving trenches of the National Football League. 132 Sundays spent intensely reading pre-snap offensive shifts, communicating incredibly complex coverages through the deafening roar of a hostile crowd, and physically anchoring the secondary against the league's most lethal, explosive weapons. He wasn't just a player on a depth chart. He was the on-field general. He was the beating heart of that defensive unit. And now, a massive, franchise-defining era is just gone, completely erased, replaced by an eerie, unpredictable, and frankly terrifying silence. And then we pivot sharply to the other side of the ball, and it doesn't get any less dramatic. Look at this number, 1,000. In the modern, intensely pass-happy NFL, 1,000 receiving yards is the undisputed gold standard for reliability. It separates the guys you hope can make a play from the guys you know will make a play. Yet only a single receiver on this entire Colts roster managed to cross that 1,000-yard threshold last season. Just one guy you could absolutely trust when the pocket collapses, the clock is bleeding out, and the game is totally on the line. But before the dust even settled on the offseason, that entire offensive identity was fundamentally, deliberately dismantled. The reliable veterans who guided this young team through incredibly thick and incredibly thin, the absolute safety blankets that a developing offense desperately fundamentally relies on, have completely vanished. The psychological blow to a locker room when you forcefully remove its most established, stabilizing pillars simply cannot be overstated. You are suddenly asking completely untested players to carry a brutal weight they have never felt before in their lives. Section 1. The Off-Season Void. Foundational veterans are not just missing due to some unlucky string of injuries or a natural wave of retirements. They have been actively, purposefully removed by the organization, leaving behind a franchise standing right on the terrifying edge of the abyss. We really need to understand exactly what was lost here to grasp the sheer, crushing gravity of what comes next. The impact of these specific moves cannot be overstated. Michael Pittman, the incredibly reliable, heavy-volume focal point of the entire passing attack, the one man who crossed that 1,000-yard mark, was unceremoniously shipped off to the Pittsburgh Steelers. And for what? For a mere late-day 3-pick swap. The front office practically gave away their most trusted, battle-tested offensive asset just to clear the deck. And then the defensive anchor, the guy with 132 games under his belt, Kenny Moore II, formally requested a trade in April, abruptly and shockingly ending a legendary 9-year run with the organization. It was a tense, franchise-shaking moment. When you lose Pittman for essentially pennies on the dollar and Moore actively demands his way out of the building, you don't just lose their on-field statistical production. You lose the very heartbeat, the very soul of your locker room. The margin for error has instantly, completely evaporated. Section 2. The wide receiver gamble. With a massive piece like Pittman totally gone, you would naturally assume the front office would aggressively hunt for a replacement in free agency, right? That is just standard operating procedure. When a massive void opens up, you fill it with a proven veteran commodity. But reports explicitly confirm the Colts are not planning to pursue a true number 3 receiver, let alone a dominant, game-changing threat on the open market. This is an incredibly risky, highly calculated gamble. Just think about the sheer staggering contrast here. On one side, you had the established, heavy-volume reliability of Michael Pittman. You knew exactly what you were getting every single Sunday. A massive target share, incredibly tough, chain-moving physicality, and a guy who isn't afraid to go over the middle. On the other side, the immense immediate expectations are now resting squarely on an internal committee of unproven or physically recovering talent. The front office is deliberately, consciously putting the entire weight of the passing game on Alec Pierce, Josh Downs, and tight end Tyler Warren. They are literally betting the entire house on potential. Let's walk through the incredibly tense, highly scrutinized metrics driving this entire decision, because the numbers here are wild. The Colts just handed Alec Pierce a massive, franchise-altering deal worth $28.5 million per year. At 26 years old, he had a great run. He absolutely did. He led the league in yards per reception, boasting a stellar 11.9 yards per target. But you have to look at the 2026 expectation. The mandate right now is clear. Double volume WR1. Anyone who actually watches the grueling reality of the NFL knows you cannot just mandate a role player to suddenly absorb 100-plus targets without some brutal, potentially season-derailing growing pains. Pierce has never even seen 85 targets in a single professional season, and now they want 100-plus, with all the double coverage that comes with it. Meanwhile, we have to talk about Josh Downs. He saw a sharp, frankly frightening statistical drop. After posting over 1,500 yards combined in his first 2 seasons, he dipped all the way down to just 566 yards in 2025. Now, to be fair, that dip directly followed Daniel Jones's season-ending injury, which plunged the entire offense into total chaos. Downs had to play through a rotating cast of quarterbacks and some lingering physical limitations, but the NFL doesn't care about excuses. Now the Colts are demanding a sharp, desperate bounce back from a player whose efficiency metrics essentially fell off a cliff last year. It is a monumental, incredibly heavy ask for both of these guys. And what if Pierce struggles to handle that heavy double coverage? What if Downs absolutely cannot bounce back to his early career form? Well, the survival of this entire passing game then rests entirely on the secondary weapons. You have the 2025 first-rounder, Tyler Warren, at tight end. He put up a very impressive 817 yards last season. But you really have to look closer at the nuance of that number to understand the danger here. Nearly 60% of that production came completely after the catch. He has to violently evolve his game downfield. Because if he doesn't, defensive coordinators across the entire league are simply going to press him incredibly hard at the line of scrimmage, disrupt his timing, and completely neutralize all those yards after the catch. If they take Warren away, they force Nick Westbrook-Ikine and core special teamer Ashton Dulin to suddenly have to win pure one-on-one matchups on the outside boundary. And backing them up, a 7th-round rookie, Deion Burks, tasked with providing critical, incredibly demanding slot depth against seasoned, ruthless NFL defensive backs. The Colts are quite literally walking a razor-thin tightrope in the middle of a Category 5 hurricane. Section 3. The Slot Corner Dilemma. If you thought the offense was walking a dangerous tightrope, the defense is staring down a potential, full-blown structural collapse. The staggering, massive gap left by Kenny Moore II is not just a missing player on a printed depth chart. It is a fundamental, glaring vulnerability just waiting to be mercilessly exploited by every single offensive coordinator in the National Football League. Honestly, read these stats like a eulogy for a dominant defensive era. Over 9 incredibly grueling years, Moore wasn't just a cover corner. He was an absolute, undeniable force of nature near the line of scrimmage. 39 tackles for loss, 11.5 sacks, and remember, that is from the secondary, 21 interceptions, and 4 totally game-changing pick sixes. He was the great eraser for this entire defense. When a play totally broke down or a gap was completely blown wide open by the defensive line, Moore was the veteran instincts, the pure muscle memory that swooped in and cleaned up the absolute mess. And now, that eraser is gone. To truly, deeply understand what the Colts have lost here, you absolutely have to understand the sheer, mind-bending complexity of the role itself. The slot defender position is incredibly demanding. It is not just running backward in man coverage with a fast, shifty receiver. It is so much more than that. You have to read the run gaps instantly, the literal millisecond the ball is snapped. You have to manage crazy shifting pre-snap motion from the offense without ever losing your primary assignment. You have to constantly, loudly communicate leverage changes to the massive 250-pound linebacker standing right next to you. And you have to fight through heavy, punishing traffic on the quick, agonizing throws that modern offenses use to meticulously, slowly move the chains. It's essentially playing middle linebacker, strong safety, and cornerback all at exactly the same time, while running backward at full speed against Olympic-level athletes. No pressure at all, right? Now look at this terrifying, unbelievable juxtaposition. The Colts are actively, willfully choosing to replace a 9-year veteran, a documented, absolute master of the nickel position, with Justin Wally. Wally is a 2025 third-round draft pick, but here is the absolute kicker. He missed his entire rookie season after suffering a devastating, horrific torn ACL in training camp. Just let that fully sink into your mind for a second. You are handing the most intellectually and physically demanding defensive role in this entire scheme to a totally unproven young player who has literally never played a single regular season NFL snap in his life. And he is doing it while trying to actively recover from major reconstructive knee surgery. It is a staggering, monumental leap of faith. The gap between a battle-tested 9-year master and a rehabbed, completely unseen rookie is as vast as the ocean, and this perfectly, chillingly encapsulates the front office's high-stakes gamble. Section 4. The Rookie Infusion. With the foundational, stabilizing veterans systematically cleared out of the building, the Colts front office brought in 8 brand-new draft picks and 12 undrafted free agents. These aren't just fresh faces meant to quietly hold clipboards on the practice squad while they learn the ropes. These are raw, totally untested reinforcements being thrown straight into the brutal, unforgiving fire to keep this entire franchise afloat. Listen to Bryce Boucher, the 4th-round linebacker and, incredibly, a former 13th-round Major League Baseball draft pick. He tells reporters, everything's very organized. You got the same coverages, just different terminology. Boucher is having to dive headfirst into a vastly complex, incredibly deep defensive playbook, designed by defensive coordinator Lou Anaramo and linebackers coach James Betcher. But why are they relying so incredibly heavily on him right out of the gate? Because of his background in professional baseball, Boucher possesses a rare, stoic, almost unnatural maturity. In an NFL training camp where the daily dynamic often violently teeters between frantic panic and meticulous preparation, the Colts desperately, urgently need his calm demeanor to translate the aggressive new terminology of the pros into immediate day-one execution. Then there is Jalen Farmer, a very intriguing 4th-round guard out of the SEC. He quickly established himself as offensive line coach Tony Sparano Jr.'s absolute draft and stash prospect. Sparano Jr. is a coach who absolutely demands a culture of sheer unapologetic violence and relentless, grinding effort in the trenches, and Farmer's mindset fits that to a T. He says, honestly, just get better. Wherever coach wants to put me at, I'm ready to be there. It is pure, unadulterated, raw hunger. He is stepping into a room with highly established starters. But let's be totally real here. In a highly volatile rebuild year where veteran depth has been completely stripped away to the studs, that draft and stash label means absolutely nothing. One twisted ankle in early August, one totally missed blocking assignment in September, and Farmer's multi-year developmental timeline could easily accelerate into a starting role faster than anyone in the building actually anticipates. Now, I really want you to feel the fierce, crackling energy shifting here. This is Dion Burks, taken with the absolute, literal final pick of the Colts draft, 254th overall. He fell way, way farther than anyone expected on draft weekend. But instead of being discouraged, instead of just being politely happy to be there, he has an incredibly massive, angry, psychological chip on his shoulder. He is violently, unapologetically confident. Listen to this. I know I've got a rare skill set. I definitely do expect to be on the field somehow, and definitely going to make some noise. He is telling the media outright, directly to their faces, that he isn't going to quietly wait his turn. He expects to absolutely explode onto the field, whether that's tearing up the slot position or flying down the field like a missile on special teams. When you strip a roster completely down to the studs like the Colts have, you desperately need players with this exact brand of unapologetic arrogance just to survive the season. And finally, we have to look at defensive end George Gums Jr. He might honestly have the absolute hardest, steepest road to playing time of anyone in this entire rookie class. But his quote brilliantly grounds us emotionally in what these young players are actually going through behind the scenes. He says, I was just kind of tired of just being out of the mix. I wanted to definitely get back to playing ball. That raw, honest desire reveals a total exhaustion with the endless sterile job interviews, the incredibly precise jumping metrics, and the cold stopwatches of the scouting combine. And it perfectly, beautifully connects to the overarching, looming theme of this entire offseason. The Colts front office is playing a highly calculated, incredibly high-stakes spreadsheet game of potential and projected value. But out on the field, these rookies aren't spreadsheets. They just have to survive on the grass against incredibly strong grown men. They have to grow up immediately or they will be eaten alive. Will this massive, sweeping youth movement actually work? Just let that massive, terrifying, overarching question hang in the silence for a moment. The sheer volume of absolute inexperience across the board for Indianapolis right now is staggering. If you look back through the complex annals of modern NFL history, it is incredibly, exceedingly rare for a franchise to execute a sweeping youth movement successfully without a reliable, battle-tested veteran safety net to catch them when they inevitably stumble. Without those seasoned, calming voices in the locker room to steady the ship after a heartbreaking last-second loss, youth movements can very easily spiral into totally lost, embarrassing seasons. The raw talent is there, yes. The athletic potential is undeniably explosive. But raw potential does not win grinding, bitter, freezing cold divisional games in the middle of December. Section 5. Make or break season. We really have to zoom out here and look at the massive, overarching scale of this situation. This isn't just a minor roster shuffle forced by some unlucky salary cap constraints. This is a franchise-defining, highly controversial philosophical shift. The Indianapolis Colts are deliberately, methodically, and consciously choosing to bank entirely on what could be, rather than what is definitively proven. They are relying on an internal wide receiver committee that completely lacks high-volume regular season proof. They are trusting one of the most vital, insanely complex defensive roles to a young player returning from a totally devastating ACL tear. They are hoping raw, unpolished, late-round draft and stash prospects can somehow hold off seasoned, physically dominant NFL veterans. It is a strategy heavily fraught with extreme, palpable danger. The front office is essentially attempting to build a highly complex airplane while it is already falling rapidly from the sky. And when the bright, optimistic, sunny lights of August training camps transition into the brutal, unrelenting, violent reality of actual NFL offenses, that is exactly when we will truly see if this massive, unprecedented gamble pays out. Which brings us to the ultimate, defining question as we wrap up this deep dive explainer. Can unproven, entirely raw potential truly hold the line when the bright, incredibly unforgiving stadium lights come on? Or will the ghosts of these departed veterans, the steady, reliable, chain-moving physicality of Michael Pittman, the masterful, erasing, brilliant defense of Kenny Moore, haunt the Indianapolis Colts all season long? It is an incredibly high-stakes gamble, and the entire league is watching with bated breath to see if the house finally wins or if the whole structural foundation comes completely crashing down. Let me know what you think is going to happen in the comments below. I really want to read your thoughts on this. If you enjoyed this cinematic deep dive into the source material, please make sure to subscribe to NFL Nexus, absolutely like the video, and seriously consider becoming a channel member to support more deep dive explainers exactly like this one. Think deeply about that final question, and I'll catch you next time.